Hello everyone, welcome to Patrick Talks About Fallout New Vegas. Now this is the first episode of my new show called Patrick Wastes Your Time, and I nearly screwed up my own name there, so we're off to a great start. This is a show where, as I attempt to paint various Warhammer figures, I will also try to entertain you with my ramblings on various topics, usually related to games, books, TV series, films, sort of nerd culture-y stuff in general. If you like that sort of thing, this is a show for you. Should be a weekly thing, if I can be bothered, who knows? It might not be, it might be a complete failure and I give up on it after about 2 weeks. I might give up on it after this, who knows? But I will persist, because I said I was doing this, and so I'm going to. Now, Fallout New Vegas is my favourite game of all time. I think it's really good. I think it provides you with a very complete sense of satisfaction. It really does just give you certainly what I'm looking for out of a game. A sense of freedom, the ability to make meaningful choices, the ability to role-play your character, like very entertaining gameplay, gunplay. Can you say gunplay? Well, now you can. Companions, interesting characters, all sorts of good stuff. And that's really what I look for in a game, and Fallout New Vegas does this best. Out of all the games I've played, it is the one that I find it is the most successful in entertaining me through these means. It's a bit clunky, a bit rusty, a bit out of date in many senses, but if you play it on PC, you can quite easily fix that with mods. Which is another great thing this game has. It's got lots of mods. It's got a good modding community. There's still people making mods for it to this day. So it's not like it's, despite being quite a few years old, it's not one that has been forgotten. I still play it to this day. I find it really fun. It's probably my 4th playthrough. This time I'm just doing my original character again, but this time on the PC, so that's what I'm doing. A bit of a nostalgic trip through my favourite game, playing my favourite character. In this case, my favourite character is myself. Myself in the world of Fallout New Vegas. If I was playing myself, it would be rather boring, and I wouldn't be able to do any of the things the main character would. It would be not something anyone would be very interested in playing. Now, what is so good about Fallout New Vegas? Well, for me, it's the fact that I can, or the player can, just do things very freely. I don't feel like I'm being restricted too much. I feel like if I do something in a quest, I've done it in a way that makes sense. I don't feel like I'm sitting there doing the quest and going, well, hang on, why can't I do this instead? Because quests are very diverse in terms of choices, in terms of different routes, and of course of different endings. Even ways you can start the quest can be very, very different depending on who you talk to, what group you're siding with, that sort of thing. So quests are brilliant in this game. Ones that have so many different ways of completing them are just great, because you won't even see, it won't really be possible to see every single ending ending every single route with one character, which means you've got that great opportunity to play through the game again. One of the best examples being a quest called Beyond the Beef, where the main character is asked to investigate this casino, which is really fancy and groovy, and it seems very upper class, very formal, polite, not particularly suspicious at all, apart from the well-dressed people wearing masks, but that's nothing too out of the ordinary, I suppose. So you investigate, and mostly based on the fact that either, depending on why or which way you started the quest, either because you've been asked to find this guy's missing son, or because you want to make sure this group isn't still a bunch of cannibals. Yes, still, not are, because apparently in the past they used to be cannibals, but now they aren't. They've civilized themselves, to use a poor word, but I think you get my point. Essentially, before the man who now runs Vegas, Mr. House, took over, they apparently used to be cannibals. And so Mr. House, if you picked that particular route, wants you to find out, are they still cannibals? Are they attempting to become cannibals again? Something like that. And so you do this and you ask around and eventually find out that some of the White Glove Society want to be cannibals, others don't. And it's up to you to decide, well, would it be a good idea to make them cannibals or not? Now, it's not really, is cannibalism good? It's more, would them being cannibals be advantageous to me or my faction? In some cases the answer is yes, in others it's not. As you can probably understand, most of the time it isn't a good thing. Now, you can even do things like this, like obviously they need someone to eat so that they can get back into the joys of eating human flesh. So that person is, and here's a little spoiler, the missing son. He's still alive, but he's trapped in a fridge in the, I suppose, kitchens of the casino. So obviously what you could just do is kill him and eat him and then frame his father so that the White Glove Society, as they're called, can get off scot-free. Or you can find a replacement so that this guy's son can be freed and go home with his father, and then some other poor innocent soul can be eaten instead. Well, I like this ending because it gives you a compromise. It means I think the most number of people are happy. Or of course you can do the ending when you expose the White Glove Society and either destroy them entirely or just get rid of the cannibal element within the group. So there you go. There's a lot of different ways to do this quest, and there's several different ways of doing the things that I've just said. Every quest is very well thought out. Every quest is detailed and open and free and allows you to be very creative, or the game is certainly very creative in the different ways that you go about doing this task you've been given. So I think that's another great thing about the game, is how brilliant that is. The second thing is, like, I really like the story of New Vegas. I think it's very interesting how you start out as this just basically a glorified postman or courier or mailman / woman, whatever you want to say, who goes on to be this rather influential figure within the history of the Mojave Wasteland. Because you start out at the start of the game as somebody who's meant to deliver this package to the New Vegas Strip, but you get ambushed and shot in the head, and of course your package is taken from you. Now, logically, your character isn't very happy about this, so you vow to get it back. You've obviously survived being shot in the head, as you can probably tell from my description of what was going on there, but you get the point. But apart from that quest to get your package back, you haven't really got anything else that you have to do. You're pretty free at this point to go into the wasteland and just have a swell old time. That's one problem with New Vegas, is how you start the game with this quest that takes you on this very linear path, because basically everyone points you in the right direction, so you just follow it. But that all changes once you actually reach Vegas, where you can... That's when the game really opens up and you're free to do what you want to, because suddenly, because of things that you go on to do in Vegas, the world and all of its factions and societies take interest in you. So that's when the game is, well, it frees you from the confines of the slightly linear first main quest. And that's when the game becomes really fun, because suddenly you really become somebody of quite great importance to everyone around you, meaning that everyone suddenly is taking interest in you. They're like, oh, you're that courier. Yes, it would be great if you could help us, because you're such an important person. And of course everyone's just taking advantage of you, because, hey, you were pretty good. We could use you to further our own ends, which is basically what happens in every ending, but it's up to you to decide which group you like the most, or hate the least, as I like to say. That's another good thing about Fallout New Vegas, is how everything is very much up to you to decide what is right and wrong. There are a few occasions where there are more linear good and evil, black and white sides to the question you're being asked, which is best represented by the game's karma system. Do something good, you gain karma. Do something bad, you lose karma. I'm pretty sure that's not how karma works, but it's a game mechanic, and it does what it's meant to, so that's fine. So then but most of the time the decisions you make are not so linear. They're mostly decided by, like, faction reputation. It's more like doing things that one group doesn't like makes them not like you. You get a negative reputation with that group, and doing something that they do like will give you a more positive reputation with that group. Which means that that's more how you base things. You decide, well, which groups do I like? So who do I want to upset them in this particular instance, or do I want to do what they think is right? And that's mostly how you base your decisions in this game. You decide what's right and wrong, not what a little box in the corner of the screen tells you is right and wrong, which is a problem I had with Fallout 3, because it's very linear and it tells you this is right and this is wrong. And yes, the choices are rather more black and white there, but it's less interesting, it's less fun, it's less unique. So that's one thing Fallout New Vegas does brilliantly, is this freedom for you to decide what's best, or what's the least bad. What's the least bad? That's the best way to describe every problem that will show up in Fallout New Vegas. Which one of these things do you think is the least terrible? So, you've got 4 endings to the game, 3 of which are based on the 3 main factions, and the last one is known as the wild card ending, because it's a little bit more unorthodox compared to the other 3. It involves you taking a more direct control of the situation. If you understand what I'm trying to say. If you don't understand what I'm trying to say, just play the game and find out. So, the first group, the one that most people would describe as picking the good ending, if there is such a thing in Fallout New Vegas, is the New California Republic, the NCR. The New California Republic very much represent the old world system of how we controlled things, with a democratically elected government, elections, bureaucracy, taxes, all of that stuff. So that means they're trying to bring about all the good things that the old world had to offer. Did I say Fallout New Vegas isn't a post-apocalypse? Well, it is. You could probably guess by the why it's called Fallout, but yeah, you get my point. So, because they obviously represent the old world with all of its freedom and democracy and liberty and equality and all of that good stuff, it also comes with all the negative things like bureaucracy and corruption and kind of not caring about the little people in the world, the little guy, that sort of thing. So, there you've got a choice. Do you think having a group that represents all that's good and bad with the old world should be in charge, give the old world another shot? Then the NCR's probably for you. They are, well, I would say arguably the good ending, or the closest thing the game has to a good ending. Then there's Caesar's Legion, which are the, again, sort of closest thing you can get to bad guys in the game. They represent a group of an army of slaves founded of the conquest of 86 tribes, as the introduction to the game will tell you. And they obviously represent, well, they're trying to be a sort of new Roman Empire in the post-apocalyptic world. So they think we should sort of go further back and try and create a society built on where only the strong survive, and that this new world we live in has no place for weakness. So that's their idea of how to bring the world into the future by going into the past. But yeah. Now, of course, that means they also bring about all the bad things with the old world, which is, you know, slavery and torture and murder and pretty rampant sexism and all of that wonderful, wonderful stuff that Rome did so well. So, then again, you're left with a choice. Do I want to bring about this harsh and brutal slave empire that could potentially make the world a better place? As people will say, if you talk to them about the Legion, they'll say, well, they're not the best, but they do make things a lot safer. There's very little conflict within the areas they control, probably because everyone's scared to death of the Legion, but hey, it works. So, there you go. There's a more morally questionable choice. I wouldn't say they're the best faction if you care about morals in that sense. You're probably going to lose the most karma if you go with the Legion, but you know, you can justify their flaws. Not my preferred faction. Which I'm gonna talk about now. Now, the third group, or in this case, sort of person you can pick to side with, is Mr. House. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Mr. House is the guy who runs Vegas. He rules Vegas from the shadows, and nobody's actually seen him. So he's kind of this very mysterious figure who rules Vegas from the shadows and nobody knows anything about. But of course, because you're a very special person with a very special delivery to make, you get to meet Mr. House. Go into his casino, which nobody has entered in 200 years. And House is best described as a very intelligent person who's also very annoying. Again, this would bring about a dictatorship in the Mojave Wasteland. It would sort of maintain the status quo way of ruling, not necessarily the status quo in terms of everything, though. Mr. House is a very intelligent man. He has, for example, to defend Vegas, an army of robots, police and military robots. He is also somebody who knows a hell of a lot about the old world, the world before the nuclear war. And of course, if you play the game, you get to find out why that is. So, House is, as a person, certainly not the most likeable, but in my mind, he has the potential to make the wasteland a better place through technology and scientific progress. He would also probably make Vegas even cooler than it already is in the game, which is always a plus. So if you like New Vegas, you'd probably want to go with the House ending. I think House is actually the best ending, simply because I believe he has the potential to get humanity the furthest in the shortest space of time. He's a dictator and a dick, but I believe his ends justify the means, certainly more than legions do. I think he's probably like a lot of very intelligent people in the way that they're probably not the most likeable if you just were to speak to them, but once you actually get to know what they're trying to do, I think you'd come over to their side a bit more. So that's Mr. House. Mr. House, my favourite ending. I mean, the guy says we'd get into orbit in 100 years. 100 years. Think about that. And he also doesn't, despite being a dictator, doesn't have a lot of the problems Legion has, for various reasons. So, those are the main groups in the game that you can choose from. There's also various other factions and groups that you can join and get to side with you in the end game battle. Like the Boomers, for example. Now, the Boomers used to be Vault Dwellers, specifically Vault 34, if I remember correctly. And Vault 34 was a vault that had a hell of a lot of guns and ammunition and explosives and all sorts of weapons. Now, essentially that meant that everyone had weapons in there, which eventually caused a lot of problems. I can't quite remember the story, and you might as well just find it out for yourself by playing the game. So the Boomers left their vault and headed out into the wasteland, and they found an old Air Force base where they've settled and are slowly learning how to fly bombers, or teaching their children how to. Now, they have the potential to greatly assist in the final battle at the end of the game by having a fighter. Well, it's a bomber. Yeah, an old world bomber. Bomb the enemy during the end of the game. Now, that would be rather useful, I think. So, there's a quest where you have to get them to join you, and they can actually help out any other group because they'll be mostly left alone by the other groups if you just get them, if they just are willing to help you. You can also just wipe them all out so that the enemy can't use them. You can do that with most factions in this game. In fact, you can kill absolutely everyone in this game, except for one character who I won't tell you the name of, who has to be kept alive so that you can actually just finish the game. But other than him, everyone else is killable, which I think is great, because that's how real life is, and whilst Fallout New Vegas is a great way of escaping from real life, it's also fun that the rules of life and death still apply in the Mojave Wasteland, as they should, really, as they should. So, that's a great thing about Fallout New Vegas, and of course the ending will reflect this. If you just go out and murder everyone, the game will tell you what happens to all the towns and groups that you viciously killed for no reason other than to just have a little bit of fun with the game's all the game's characters being killable. I don't judge you though, it's very fun. It truly is a great experience. So, they have some of the things that I think are really great about this game. This is the first time I've also done anything like this. I'm not going off a script, and I'm distracted by this figure I'm trying to paint at the same time, but this is probably very boring to listen to, but it's interesting to hear somebody just talk straight from the heart. If you found this interesting, if you'd like to hear more from me, which you probably won't, because this is just a thing I'm mostly doing as a joke, but you know, if you want to hear more, if you want me to hear, if you have any advice, if you think, Patrick, get a script, you lazy bastard, tell me that. And I'll do it. I'm very happy to receive any criticism will be gladly received and considered. This is a terrible thing, but it's just my way of talking about something I really like for about 25 minutes without wasting anybody's time unless they truly choose to, in which case, thank you for listening, and I hope to see you on another episode of Patrick Wastes Your Time.